Yeah, totally.
Thought
Well,
I was
thanks for the
prepared.
time. I really appreciate you dedicating a few minutes to come on the show. It's been a little while since I've seen you. For those listening, I I sort of was made aware of Workshop 5001 through Henry Catchpole's kind of video of your cars and your builds.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of how long ago that video was, but I think I saw it much later than it came out.
Okay.
Um,
Was it one on the 964? He's actually done a few videos of our stuff.
Yeah, and then I think I hit you up via DM and then came and visited the shop, which you were nice enough to give me a little tour of. But I know you're mostly known for rebuilding engines, let's say. What are like, can you just go over some of the reasons why somebody would rebuild an engine? Because there's more than one, right?
I would say more often than not, it's because they're leaking all over the place.
Okay.
I mean that's kind of the normal reason. And these air cooled Porsche engines, even if they're leaking badly, they'll continue to run. And
Yeah.
I had my old accountant had a BMW that leaked badly, and his thing was, well, I just keep adding oil, and I never have to pay for an oil change. So
Right.
you could live by that philosophy, but if you're someone who doesn't want oil all over your floor, and you like things to be right, or you want to use it as an opportunity to make it a better version of itself,
Right.
that's I guess where I come in.
Sure.
I mean, very few of the engines I build are like stock original. I mean, I'm happy to build engines that way, but I think the majority, of clients who come to me, they want a performance engine.
Yeah.
And if you need to pass California smog, it's very limited what you can change. But the majority of our clients are outside of California or even outside of the country, and live in places where we can build them whatever they want.
Sure. Um, a lot. So I have a 997, as you know. I think, did you see my car? Did I
Yeah,
drive
yeah.
it
You
to the
brought
shop?
it,
Okay.
the black on tan car.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, wow, good memory. So the thing is, I must have just had it then the last time I saw you. Um, there's a select group of people, let's say, there's bore scoring, there's, the IMS bearing, there's all this nonsense on the internet. My 2 cents is that it's a far lesser population than people would allude to online. But rumor has it, a lot of people, if they do ever say blow their engine in a 997, sometimes they'll go in and bore it out to 4 liter from a 3.8. Is that
Right.
something you do?
We really don't do much with the water cooled cars yet.
Okay, got it.
As the time goes on and they get older and they become considered, Porsche classic.
Sure.
I mean, we will start doing them, but I think the first step into it, and really the only water cooled stuff we've been working on, are the, still Metzger based engines. So
Okay.
the GT3s up until 2012, the turbos through 2009, because those are still, an evolution of the air cooled, crankcase. Everyone calls them Metzger engines.
Sure.
And so that I think will be the more natural progression for us to do those. But as far as the normal, I call them the integrated sump engines, like that regular 996, 997 had. I just there's not that big of a demand yet, and
Hmm.
we are a time and material shop. So if
Yeah.
I were to build one of those engines, if I did one tomorrow and it's the first one, I wouldn't be very efficient. That may not
Right.
necessarily be fair to clients. So it's the kind of thing that I'll do one at some point for fun and get my process honed in, and then it'll make sort of commercial sense. And we'll see. I mean, I know there are some guys doing them, and it's more of like a budget kind of exchange. But at this point, even if you're someone who's doing them as an exchange, and they're not really a super performance based engine, they're probably the cost of that engine is going to quickly exceed the value of the car.
Right.
And even though that's very often the case, even with these air cooled cars, people just have a different philosophy and are more willing to spend money on the air cooled stuff. And and it can easily be argued that the modifications, if they're done correctly on these air-cooled cars, will help the value of the car.
Right.
Certainly if it's a car we've totally rebuilt, or um, even cars where I'm just doing the engine, we're not really just doing the engine. I'm going through the whole oil system. We're usually going through the car mechanically. We kind of call those cars our patina builds, where
Right.
we're not doing a full restoration on the car because maybe it doesn't need it, or
Hmm.
people appreciate the whatever state of deterioration the cosmetics are in, and they just want it to be gone through mechanically. And we do 5 of those for, or maybe even 7 of those for every full restoration we do.
Oh, wow.
I think that's always a big part of getting people to understand how my shop operates, is that yes, we have our full builds that are very expensive and they're numbered, and it's like buying a new car basically. I mean,
Hmm.
yes, there are pieces that we're reconditioning and reusing, but lots and lots of new parts. So in we're in business for 11, 12 years, and we're up to car number, I think, 13 or 14 right now of the
Oh,
full
wow.
builds. And like I said, for every full build, we've done probably 5 to 7 other cars that are some kind of half or three-quarter, or sport purpose makeover, or they've just come to me for an engine. And I have a team of guys who are doing, at this point, they're doing the majority of the work on the chassis side, but I still build every engine myself. So
Oh,
I
wow.
think we have kind of a unique process in that regard, where I am still building every engine, and my team is doing the chassis side, and I'm still jumping in, where I need to on the chassis side. I'd like that to be less and less. And even some days I'm like, well, I wish I was training someone else to build engines or whatever. I think the majority of the people who are coming to me for engines, it's because I'm still the one building the engines.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of a double-edged sword. But
Sure.
I physically, I don't know that I can do this forever,
Right.
and exposure to chemicals and things like that is always a bit of a concern.
Yeah.
And I want to be around to spend time with my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I I don't know, eventually, I think any of the guys who work for me are probably, if they've seen me do it enough and they're involved in little pieces, any of them are capable of building an engine. But I think my, let's call it my OCD and my focus is what make my engines, the way that they are. So, for now it's a selling point, and we're going to keep doing things this way for a while, for the
Sure.
foreseeable future.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. I mean, obviously time and materials is kind of what you've said is maybe a limiting factor on the complete builds and such, but and costs, I'm sure. Um, what sort of could you go into a little bit more detail as to like what makes your complete build different from, say, a lot of these other resto mod type people?
Yeah. I used to really cringe at the word resto mod, but
Right.
I've started to, I guess, accept it a little bit. And, it actually is a good kind of descriptive term, but,
Well,
some
I
of these
do think
things,
you are different. That's why I'm saying like
yeah,
so before people jump, into categorizing you under this overarching umbrella of resto mod,
right.
in quotes, what makes a workshop car, different and maybe not suitable for that terminology?
Yeah. I think that visually, I just have a more conservative approach. I've never really had the philosophy of like turning a 911 into something else.
Right.
Um, you know, I, um, I mean, even though, I was involved in the early days at Singer, I had the mechanical fascination with it, but backdating the bodywork really never made sense and appealed to me.
Got it.
Now I call all these guys the backdate butchers, because at this point, 964s especially have become, so valuable, and they're so rare compared to other generations of 911, that it's really a shame that people are backdating them. And we have taken some backdated 964s and turned them back into
Back into
964s.
964s.
Yeah.
The irony. Yeah.
And I think we will definitely, see more of that in the future. So I think that, my current philosophy is that I don't want people to look back at cars that I've built in 10, 20, 50 years and say, what the hell was this guy thinking?
Right.
So my philosophy is, okay, we're going to restore this car. If there are parts out there that are, truly better than the original parts, and there may be motorsport parts, I'm all about lacing those in a cohesive way, as long as I'm not compromising it as a vehicle. I want to
Right.
make it more reliable, not less reliable, because there's more bad aftermarket parts than good ones. So unless we can genuinely update a car and lace in this motorsport componentry and still keep it as a good road car, then I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So we're very conservative in the way that we do things, and we're also, to use the best stuff, it's also more expensive. So we have this kind of niche where we've spent a lot of time and money to maybe make it look like we didn't do anything at all.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that's the ultimate cool factor, and you see a lot of these people doing resto mods or whatever people want to call them. And it's like, what the hell are they thinking? And it's like they had 500 good ideas, or maybe good ideas, depending who you ask, and they want to implement all of them. How about
Right.
implement like two or three and save some for the next car? It's like they just, I don't know. It's like a word my grandmother would have used. They potchka them up, with just too much shit and stickers. And it's like,
Yeah.
boy, it's like some 16-year-old's idea of my first hot rod.
Yeah, 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 totally. So what sort of led you to Singer initially?
Well, I was working at Beverly Hills Porsche, actually in the sales department. I got pushed into sales because they had too many guys in the shop.
No way.
And when I had moved from New York, and I wanted a job there, the guy who was the shop foreman at the time, he's like, "Look, if I hire you, I'm taking work away from my other guys." But I lived walking distance from Beverly Hills Porsche, and I said, "Look, I just want a job here." And I, sort of worked my way into a sales position, even though the general manager at that time said, "Oh, a mechanic can't sell cars." I go, "Oh, really?"
Oh
And
yeah.
I was the top salesperson my second month. And the only reason I wasn't top salesperson the first month is, for the first 2 weeks, I wasn't allowed to talk to customers.
Oh
But once I was allowed to talk to customers, which I took upon myself on a Saturday when it was busy and people, walked into the showroom, weren't being helped, I'm like, I'm just going to start helping people. If they don't like it, they can fire me. And I
right.
sold, 6 or 8 cars in the second half of the month. And that was before Macans existed. So 6 or 8 cars was a lot of cars in a
Yeah.
grocery store, pre-Macan, pre-Taycan. And so I was on pace to be the top salesperson. And then I did it almost every single month at Beverly Hills. There was um, one sales guy there who had a big book of Hollywood clients who never got up from his desk, and he was usually the top salesperson. But I was young and I was hustling and
Sure.
greeting people on the lot, and doing what I could to put together deals. So I was beating him most months. And then when I left Singer, I went to work at Auto Gallery, which now it's Porsche Woodland Hills. At that time, it was Auto Gallery Porsche, and I was top salesperson every month for 2 years. And that was because Harry, who was the owner, when I went to him for a job, he goes, "I want you selling cars, not working on cars." And
Right.
okay, and I was good at it. I mean, but I think I don't know. I enjoy both parts of the business, and I'm one of the few people who really is, I guess, trained to do both. And I loved working in the dealer. The dealers are complicated places today, and some are
Yeah.
significantly better than others. That's a whole other conversation, I guess.
Yeah,
So
totally. So you were you recruited by Singer to then go,
no, so
after?
I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent. I was
Oh,
working at Beverly Hills Porsche, and Rob came in one day just to look at cars, and he was driving. The first two cars were both 1988 chassis. He was driving one of those cars, and I knew what it was because the first press they had ever gotten was in Rob Report, and
sure.
my dad had sent me the article maybe just a few weeks before. So I immediately recognized the car, and I went over and I started talking with him, and he was with another guy, Maz, who's was heavily involved, and I
Yeah.
think still is
Yeah.
at Singer, and just kept the conversation going with them. And even though I was doing well at Beverly Hills Porsche, it was not was not a great place to work. And I, was at that time in my life was still, more interested in the technical side of things. And so that, conversation just kept going until I was ultimately working there to do the 964s and built the first 8 964 chassis cars there to completion. So kind of involved in the first 12 or 15 of them.
Oh,
And
wow.
I had actually, in my sort of downtime when I had moved to California and I wasn't yet working at Beverly Hills Porsche, I spent 6 months with Dieter at Andile because I had
Oh,
always wanted
wow.
to work there. And they had interviewed me a couple times while I was in college. And then Dieter basically said, "Oh, we're going to retire and we got to get some of these guys jobs across the street at Porsche Motorsport." They kind of split the building and or get our guys jobs elsewhere. And we would have hired you, but sorry. And
Wow.
but then he moved into a little shop and was still doing work for certain clients. And so when I was in California with no real job aside from doing like pit crew on the weekends for a Ferrari team, a Ferrari Challenge team, I convinced Dieter to let me bring out my dad's 964 and rebuild the engine. So I spent 6 months with him and learned his way of, building a 3.8 liter 964 engine. So
Wow.
I'm technically the only non-employee who ever trained at Andile, and obviously a much more personalized experience doing it, with Dieter. I don't know that I
Right.
would have survived as his employee. He didn't like me until he met my dachshund, and at one point told me I was the only Jew he'd ever met that wasn't cheap. So we had a funny dynamic.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that time and got to build that engine. And my dad technically has the last Andile 3.8 ever built.
Oh, is
So
that right?
yeah, yeah.
Wait, so
So
what did you mentioned your dad a couple times? What did he do for work? Was he reading
oh,
Rob Report regularly?
he's a cardiologist in New York, and he just
Oh,
he just happens to like Porsches and has owned Porsches since 1987, and he still has that 964 that he bought in. It was a
no
year or two
way.
old. He bought it in 1993 because they stopped putting back seats in the convertibles, and my mom had told him, if you're going to buy a car that expensive, it needs to have a back seat for kids to go in. So he had to go find a 91 in 93 to have a back seat. And he's acquired more Porsches over the years. My whole family are,
Sure.
even though the rest of my family is not in the car business, they're doctors and lawyers.
Yeah.
They like Porsches, and
Awesome.
so that's kind of how it evolved. And so yeah, he would read Rob Report and car magazines. To this day, he still sends me articles and links. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's great. Okay, so you got a lot of seat time back there in those little jump seats as a kid. What was the spec of the car? What does it look like?
It's a triple black 964 cab
Oh, no way.
that basically looks stock and original, aside from the wheels that are, it's got the original little 16-inch design 90s, because I think
Yes.
964s ride really nice on that wheel and tire package,
Yep.
and especially an open top cab or a Targa.
Right.
And the blacks are centers, the lip is polished, and
Yep.
and now it's got a 3.8, that I built with Dieter, and yeah, other than that, it looks like an original car, and he still cruises around Bridgehampton in it.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Wow. Well, I mean, it's been said that you like a lot of cars from 72, the long hoods. Can you
Yeah,
go into a little bit as to why that's special for you particularly?
yeah. I think just because they were a 1 year oddity, it's like the world wasn't smart enough for those cars. It's
Why do you say that?
people kept putting gas in the oil tank, and
Oh, right.
you
Okay,
had
I
full
got you.
service stations back then. But look, Porsche was obviously always looking to evolve the design of those cars, and they knew that moving the oil tank ahead of the axle was better for weight distribution. It was the first year that they had a 915 gearbox, so there was a lot of really neat improvements. And I think with all collectibles, not just cars, you have certain years and specs that were just, that was it. They got it right. And so I don't know. So I'm just really into 72s. We've rebuilt a bunch of them for clients. I've owned a few. I finally have one that is now kind of mine. That's a keeper.
Okay, I was gonna ask if you have
Yeah.
one in the garage.
Yeah. Well, it's here. It's not running currently, but it actually belonged to a patient of my dad's. He bought it brand new in 1972.
No
And
way.
him and his mom were patients of my dad. And so my dad's kind of known that car for like 40
Forever.
years.
Wow.
And I'd say for the last 20 years, this guy already, every time he'd come in to see my dad, oh, I'm going to sell it to you or your kid one day. And finally over the summer, I guess in July, I got a call from him and he's, the car's been sitting in the driveway dead for 3 months. And I think it's time to sell it to you. My health is starting to deteriorating. My dad is only seeing patients 3 days a week in Southampton. He closed his office in Great Neck, so
Okay.
so Artie didn't want to make the 2 hour trip out to the Hamptons to see him. He's seeing someone else locally, and
Sure.
so he called me, and I said, "Well, look, your timing is perfect because I had actually it was a Monday morning. He called me over the weekend. I had booked tickets to go to New York on Wednesday to pick up one of my daughters from sleepaway camp. And I said, Artie, I'll be at your house Wednesday morning with a check. And so I was, and I had never seen the car in person. It was a little bit rougher than I expected.
Okay.
But it's one owner Tangerine 72.
Oh,
So
no way.
I was buying it
Tangerine.
no matter what.
Yeah,
And
that's sick.
yeah, and it came with, he had bought a few sets of the steel wheels, the 15x6s that are unobtainium now. And because he used to drive it in the winter, he'd put snow tires with studs to go to Vermont and go skiing.
Amazing.
But luckily they had sprayed some kind of an old school cavity wax all over this car. So it's really, the corrosion is really minimal.
Wow.
So it's sitting in my showroom. I haven't made it run yet. It's one of these, the shoemaker has no shoes.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
I'm too busy with client cars to work on my own stuff.
Sure.
I'm trying to fit in a 356 engine for one of my dad's cars, and I'm almost done with.
Oh,
I've
amazing.
built probably 15 customer engines in the time I've been screwing around trying to fit in an engine for my dad. And then starting and stopping is like the worst possible thing you could do, because then you go
Sure.
back to it and you're like, shit, where'd I leave off? And
Right, right.
I already made one mistake. I got to backtrack a little bit, because look, obviously, when clients are spending a lot of money with us, they're the priority. So I
Sure.
feel like any, any time that I have the energy to be working, it needs to be dedicated to client cars. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at.
Okay, so what's the dream for the Tangerine?
I think in the short term, I'm going to leave it as one of these kind of patina cars,
Okay.
and I'm just going to go through it mechanically to make it drivable. Because I'm very like OCD and particular about my stuff. If I do a full restoration on it, I know I'll never drive it,
Right.
and it'll be too nice, and I won't want anything to happen to it. And obviously, I'll have a huge amount of money invested in it. So I think I want to embrace its kind of patina,
Hmm.
make it a reliable driver, and then just kind of put it in the rotation of the cars that my wife and I use. So.
Sure. What's your daily driver currently?
Currently, well, today I'm driving my 1997 Land Rover that barely makes it between the house and the shop.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a roll of the dice every morning, huh?
it is. Luckily, I only live about 3 miles away from the shop, so there's plenty of days that my daily driver is a Waymo. I've got really into
Oh
taking
my God,
Waymos.
that's hilarious.
But I've got all kinds of cool cars. I mean, I have a 2023 G-Wagon. I guess that's really my business daily driver.
Okay.
But I get nervous about parking on the street. So a day like today, we have guys here who are doing some dry ice blasting on a chassis, and
I
they're
was
using
just gonna
our
ask you
driveway.
about that actually. Like, okay, so you do like the cryo thing?
Here and there. I know that there are some people who have made that part of their just overall process.
Yeah,
We use it only in unique situations. Like the car that's getting done is a 964 that's actually one of our full builds, but it's too nice of a chassis to media blast and strip off all the original undercoating and seam seal. Because
sure.
we've kind of learned that the seam seal and undercoats that we buy today, I don't think are as good as what Porsche used in the 90s. So
Really?
if you have a chassis that's really well preserved and doesn't need to be media blasted, we try not to. So essentially, that car, just with a power washer and scrub brushes and simple green, we got it to 90%, because it's staying the same guards red. So it's just getting an exterior repaint. The B surfaces we're going to leave pretty much original. But what ended up happening is we had to strip the interior to do some metal repairs. And what ended up being an issue is, we used cans and cans of adhesive remover, but there was a little bit of glue. Then we had to do some metal work, and some of the metal dust got into that glue. So we're really just using the dry ice blasting strategically to clean off that glue.
I see.
Because I think some people misuse the dry ice blasting, and they'll take off, for example, all the original Cosmoline, the brown waxy coating that Porsche used up until kind of midway through the 997s. And they'll take that off all the aluminum surfaces on the chassis. And they're really doing such a disservice to that car, because that original Cosmoline, even if it has attracted dirt that has stuck to it over the years, it is still doing its job of preserving those original aluminum parts, which, you leave raw aluminum on these cars, you drive it in the rain once and it starts to oxidize. So
Yeah.
yeah, you dry ice blast a car and it looks amazing for photos, but now you have a garage clean. You have something that you really shouldn't be driving in the rain or the snow or whatever. We've started to experiment with some Cosmoline products that we've been buying, but
Hmm.
I don't know that any of them are what the factory was using pre 997s. I don't know this for sure, but if I had to bet, I would say that Porsche had to stop using it for, environmental reasons, or at least that specific product. I mean, sure, they're saving money by not using it. But all this environmental stuff has just gotten so crazy that we're using products that are really inferior to what we had, 15, 20, 30 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. You use the term B surfaces. I'm obviously not a mechanic. What is a B surface?
So, if you look at a car, what you see when it's intact and sitting on the road,
Uh-huh.
it's, basically it's paint job, the exterior paint job, that's its A surface. So
Okay.
when I talk about B surface, I'm talking about underneath the car, the wheel
I
well, the
see.
engine bay, the trunk, door jambs, things like that.
Sure. Cool. Okay, so you were more on the mechanical side of building at Singer, right? And then you moved back over to Auto Gallery, you were saying, to go into sales?
Yeah, so my official title, which was I don't know, just a made up title at Singer, was operations director.
Okay.
But my role was basically I was the head mechanic, and I was in charge of all of our day to day operations.
Cool.
At that point, there was only a handful of us working there. Rob's wife Tina, who was really the owner of the company, she had a day job as an executive assistant to a guy in the construction business who did, like, skyscraper type buildings. So she was, in addition to her day job, she was doing all of, like, bookkeeping and paying bills. So I would sit there, on the computer when I wasn't working on cars, and I was either dealing with vendors or I was forwarding things to her so that she could pay bills.
Got it.
So, now they've got, I don't know, I've heard 300 employees, and, obviously it's a whole different type of operation, but at
Sure.
that time it was very mom and pop.
So tell me about your time working with Ferrari as a challenge mechanic. Like that's our pit crew.
Oh, yeah, that was like the worst demeaning job ever.
Oh
I mean,
no.
I really did not enjoy it. Because, the guys who were, for the most part driving in Ferrari Challenge, they just have the dough to go do it. They like Ferraris. Most of them can't drive. I mean, we'd go out, these guys would just crash the cars in practice. You'd stay up all night to fix a car. They'd go out and to warm up in the morning, and they'd crash the car again.
Oh my God.
You're having to sit there and strap these guys in and reach under their balls for the sub strap. And I just hated it. I think that, there's a lot of guys who enjoy going racing. It's almost like, roadies for bands. It's like going and
Yeah.
being a roadie for the Grateful Dead, And so I think there's a certain personality type of mechanics who enjoy racing. And I think at the highest levels of racing, it's a real career. At the lower levels to go do pit crew, it's just for these guys. Oh, I want to be around race cars, and I hate
Right.
it. It was
Right.
not for me. And we don't support any racing. I mean, look, if a client came to me and said, "Build me a race car," we'll build them a phenomenal race car. But I'm not going to be the guy out there on the weekend reaching under their balls to attach their substrap. I'd rather be hanging out with my kids or
Yeah.
doing other activities. Racing is, when I was a kid, I liked race cars. Who doesn't? And
Sure.
I grew up watching, club racing at the Bridgehampton racetrack, and that was pretty formative for me. But
Yeah.
now I have little to no interest in race car stuff.
Yeah. 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 It sounds like you've got jazz going on in the background. Is this the normal playlist?
You want me to turn it down? Is it disturbing? It's actually not. We're usually listening to gangster rap, but I
I,
guess today
I
we're
was
listening to jazz. But I played. I guess I still play the saxophone, and
oh,
and
no
I
way.
studied jazz. I mean, I played at the Blue Note with Al Gray on my 16th birthday. I went to a
That's
summer
sick.
program in Switzerland. So at one time in my life, I wanted to be a jazz saxophonist. And I went to I went to Manus, which is the music school. It's part of the new school. When I was in basically all throughout middle school and high school, and I mean, I was everything I do in my life, I kind of become obsessive. And
Yeah.
at one point, I learned that, John Coltrane used to practice 18 hours a day. So that became my goal, to practice 18 hours a day.
No
And
way.
I mean, there were probably times I was getting close to that. So yeah, it was the saxophone and jazz music thing was pretty an obsession for me from, I'd say, from probably fourth grade up until about 12th grade.
So, is there a particular brand of sax that you play, or like what's like sort
Oh
of the
yeah.
Grail
So I
saxophone?
have anything I get into, whether it's cars,
Yeah.
watches, saxophones,
Oh, we'll
firearms,
we'll get
I
to the
get the best of
watches.
the best.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
so
So
I have
what's
Selmer, my favorite. I have a Selmer Mark Six. I have a Mark Seven tenor. I have Super Action 80 Series 2, Super Action 80 Series 3. So I've got my saxophone collection is beyond impressive. More
so okay.
impressive than my skills.
Okay, well that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Well at least you wouldn't have an excuse, right? Like I would be sounding better if this instrument were better. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, there's like the yuppie mentality of like the guy who's never played golf before and then he just goes out and just buys like the nicest set of golf clubs and sucks. But
Right.
I'm also like I don't want to be inhibited by my equipment either. So like I kind of get it, but like all
Well, and
those
at
like
that time when I was buying these saxophones, I was good.
oh, I'm sure.
For,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
for a
totally.
middle school and high school age kid, I was cream of the crop,
Yeah, no, I
But like
think it's
anything
great.
else, if you stop practicing and
Oh,
your
sure.
focus shifts,
Yep.
I just anything I do, and I emphasize this philosophy to my kids and people who work for me, unless you have the mindset that I want to be the best,
Yeah.
like you're never even going to get close.
Right.
Chances are you're never going to be the best, because like anything in life, there's always someone better, there's always someone worse.
Sure.
I think with building Porsche engines, I'm certainly at the top. I would never be a jerk and say I'm the best, because there are guys out there who are my friends, who I respect, who are very good. I'd let someone else try to decide which one of us is the best. I think you get to that high level and you're in that club. So
Yeah.
when I was a high school kid playing the saxophone, I was in that club for that age range. But yeah, that's my philosophy. Anything you do, you need to, or for me, I wanted to be an expert in and do it at the highest level, and
Yeah.
that's just how my brain works.
Well,
So
you know me well enough to know that I'm a big fan of watches as well. But like, all right, humor me though. Like, what does a saxophone cost? Like a nice one like that.
I don't know what they're worth now. I'm sure they're worth way more than when I bought them.
Okay.
But I'm trying to think what I paid for my Mark Six. The Mark Six Alto is probably the most valuable.
Okay.
Because and I think mine is about from 1972.
Oh, wow.
Mark
Okay.
Sixes are like, they're. I mean, a Mark Six saxophone is basically the 73 RS of saxophones.
Okay, yeah.
So
Thank you for explaining this
yeah,
to me.
and at that time, I probably spent 3 to 5 thousand on it.
Okay,
I mean, basically, I spent all my bar mitzvah money on saxophones,
sure.
and I mean, there were a few my parents bought for me, but I spent my own money too.
That's
And,
cool.
and then there was a guy in New York City. I don't know, he's probably still around. His name was Perry Ritter, and he was the guy to overhaul your Selmer saxophone.
Okay.
And at that time, you'd go in, and you never know what famous saxophone player would be in there, or the guys from the Saturday Night Live band at the time. They had a big horn section. One of
Oh,
those
yeah, yeah,
guys would
yeah.
usually be there. And so I had Perry Ritter overhaul it as soon as I had bought it, and was involved in picking out what type of pads we were using and the felt, and did it to the highest standard. And maybe he charged $1,000 or $2,000 at that time. But
Wow.
I'd have, if I had to guess, I mean, it's probably worth somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000, if not more.
Wow. Okay.
That's kind of the range. And I'd imagine if you have one of these Selmer saxophones that was owned by a famous jazz musician, they're worth exponentially more. Like
Yeah.
I don't know where John Coltrane's Selmer saxophones are, but I'm sure someone would pay probably millions of dollars for
Like
them.
Stradivarius money.
Right. And interesting, I have friends who are incredible classical musicians, and one of them plays on a Stradivarius that had belonged to Isaac Stern, and these are typically not sold anymore. They are handed down from one musician, because they're so incredibly valuable, worth millions and millions, that none of these guys who are active musicians can afford to buy them. They just deserve them. So there's people who are like benefactors or whatever who give them, or they're passed from one musician to the other. So
Yeah, I just hope the support for keeping those maintained persists because you think of like you mentioned cobblers, right? Like it's a dying breed, you know what I mean? Like so whoever's
yeah,
going to take care of these
it's
things.
interesting. We have a guy who I met. He's a wood turner and a wood expert. This guy's in his 80s. He's actually made some shift knobs for me.
Oh, no
But his
kidding.
real business is like insurance companies would hire him to repair incredibly valuable instruments like Stradivarius's. But he
Oh,
also
wow.
makes furniture. Like some of the shift knobs he made for me that were I forget what exotic hardwood, maybe it was Makassar. He's like, oh yeah, this is something that's left over from a project I did at Tom Ford's house in London.
Oh
So
my God, that's sick.
yeah, so those are the type of guys who are repairing those type of instruments.
Oh,
So
wow. What was the first concert you ever went to?
oh, the first concert I ever went to, it's funny, this actually comes up a lot, was Rolling Stones 1991, I guess, at Shea Stadium. I think it was the Steel Wheels tour, if I remember
No
correctly. My
way.
parents took me. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. What was the first album you bought with your own money then?
Wow.
It had to be gangster rap.
It did, because my mom wouldn't buy
Really?
it. That's when, they started doing the parental
Yeah.
warnings.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was probably, I mean, the first one that really sticks out in my mind is, Doggy Style, the
Oh,
Snoop Dogg
Snoop.
album.
Oh, so
Because as
you
a
went
kid in New York,
that's
like
West
the
Coast. That's
West Coast, it was like, I mean, but Snoop was Snoop and Dre. I mean, these guys were so great. And of course, you had Biggie, who was like really, I guess, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to piss anyone off, but at least to me, he was the first standout New York rapper of the time I was becoming conscious of this type of music.
yeah.
But the whole West Coast, NWA, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, as kids, it was like this forbidden fruit, because
Right.
you started getting the parental warnings, and they're singing, fuck the police, and and all the things they were saying, that is, like, this kid growing up on Long Island, the farthest thing from this street gangster world. They're like, oh, this is cool.
A
So,
100%, man.
yeah.
Um, your wife drives a 992 Carrera T, right?
Yeah, she's actually driving a Taycan every day now, though.
Oh,
So
no way. Okay. I was
yeah.
gonna ask like who chose the Carrera T? Was it really you or was it her?
That was, we believe it or not, none of the 911s I own, except now the 72 I own does have a back seat. But prior to that, every 911 I had did not have a back seat, because either it was a GT3 or I have an 84 cab that for whatever reason was a rear seat delete car. So we wanted to have one that had a back seat. My wife won't drive stick shift.
Okay.
So and these PDK cars are finally good enough that they're
Yeah.
they're worth owning. And so we ordered this Carrera T, and it's a cute color. It's shark blue and
Oh,
has
cool.
shark blue seat belts, and so my girls were involved in ordering it. So
Oh,
that's our
that's
family
amazing.
911, and we actually we've put a little over 10,000 miles on it. We were using it as an everyday car. Now we've decided that this is a car that we want to keep, and so we're trying to kind of preserve it. It was sitting outside a lot and kind of getting shitted up. And so I had my detailer spend a week on it and wet sand it, and now it looks perfect again. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's it's in the garage with my GT3, and it's OCD clean. And my wife is now driving a Taycan. She won't go to a gas station in LA anymore. She was driving a V8 Defender that was getting 11 miles to the gallon,
Sure.
which made no sense as our car that drives the kids around and gets the most miles of anything we own. And she was at a gas station on a Saturday night, and some half naked crackhead started chasing people around the gas station. And she jumped in the car and left with no gas. And that was the end of her driving a V8 Defender. And
Oh my
3 days
God.
later, it got traded in for a Taycan GTS, which we charge at the shop. And the closest Tesla supercharger, because now, as a few months ago, you can charge, I think, any electric car, but certainly a Porsche with the adapter from Porsche at the
Right.
Tesla superchargers. And the closest one is the Tesla Diner, um,
Oh,
which
that's
we love.
funny.
It's so much fun to go there.
Is
The
that's
first time we
off
went, they had protesters and everything. It was amazing.
is that off La Brea?
It is off of Highland, and
Highland.
it's a block off Highland. It's on Santa Monica. Um, so it's funny, like you go there, it only charges, it's like $20 to go from 50 to 100 as far as your charge, but then you end up spending 60 or $80 on junk food.
Right, right.
But we love it there. I've always been critical of Tesla cars, but I've always said he has a better charging network
Yeah, oh,
than
yeah.
anyone else.
Yep.
And now that it's open to other cars, I think that's great.
Yeah.
And the at that the Tesla diner, the food is really good. At any given point, they've got 10 security guards roughly, because
Really?
they had protesters and
Sure.
people damaging cars or whatever was going on. So it's safe to go there, and it's a nice place. The people who work there are lovely, and so we've been there like 3 times, and most of the time we're charging at the shop, which works out well. So I don't even charge at my house. We just do it at the shop
Oh,
basically.
that's funny, man. I guess we kind of glazed over this. Why did you start this business? Like what was like the jump, so to speak?
I mean, really, in all honesty, I just this is what I know how to do,
Yeah.
and even though I've had other interests and playing the saxophone and whatever, I built a career in the car business, and I think there's people who are car enthusiasts, and then there's people who are in the car business, and I started as an enthusiast, but I'm a car business person. I like the business. I like the dealer world, even though I think the dealer world is evolving in a very negative way. I love the car business, and it's what I know how to do. It's what I've been trained to do on not just the technical side, but the sales side.
Hmm.
And I decided I needed to work for myself, and even though it's still a career goal. I don't know how realistic it is anymore, but I'd love to own a dealership one day.
Oh, cool.
Like a franchise Porsche store.
Selling new.
Yeah, I mean that's the business I love, and it may not be realistic anymore. I think they would prefer that these stores are all owned by big groups, which is really a shame. But this is like the things were kind of coming to an end at Auto Gallery, and one of my other fascinations is real estate and restoring old buildings. We
Yeah.
obviously restored the shop where our the building where our shop is. I live in a 1930s Welton Beckett house that we restored.
Oh,
So,
wow.
um, I watched every episode of This Old House with Bob Vila when I was a kid. So,
Oh, totally.
it's one of my fascinations.
Who was the guy
But
from Connecticut? You had to have watched this guy. Old Yankee Workshop. Did you ever watch that as a kid?
I remember, wasn't that the guy Norm who then took over?
I don't remember his name, but this just jogged my memory because as a kid I would watch Bob
Yeah,
Vila,
I
and I
kind of
would
remember
Old
that.
Yankee Workshop. He'd always have like a blue plaid shirt on. He had glasses, and he had like a really thick, like New York sounding accent. I
I
remember.
think that was Norm. I
Okay,
could be
it's
wrong. We should
gotta
probably
be.
look this up.
Yeah,
But, that was, just, I guess, when I was a kid, obviously there was no internet, you would watch
yeah.
TV. And, my parents had turned off HBO because, they came home from dinner one Saturday night and I was watching like, Eddie Murphy or
Oh,
Andrew
sure.
Dice Clay or, one of those things. That was the end of HBO. So then I had, PBS and,
Yeah,
just the more family friendly TV programming. And, this old house was just one of the things I became just obsessed with. And I'm
that's
pretty sure
awesome.
as a kid, I watched every episode I had access to.
Right.
So yeah, but I guess that answers the car question. I just don't know what else to do with myself.
Yeah.
I'm in the car business. This is what I do. And I obviously do it at a high level. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to earn a living and support my family doing it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when the product is good, word of mouth is usually what reigns supreme as far as like marketing goes. What were you doing to sort of spread the word about your business, like say early days?
Honestly, as little as possible, and that's part of my philosophy because I think third party validation is really the
Yeah.
only non bullshit marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm just a very like you can put me in front of anyone to talk about cars, and I'm comfortable in that environment. But otherwise, I'm a pretty private, kind of introverted sort of person. It's rare that I go to car shows, um, and I'm just not one of these guys who's a marketer,
Right.
and
Right.
wanted to go out and do those things. So I figured the best way for me to do it was just do my work and then
Hmm.
put it out there. And obviously, a lot of these car journalists now with I call it the car porn and the videos and, and letting them, drive the cars I build and then give these, honest reviews. It served us well,
Yeah.
so I've done it that way. And, and obviously there are, things I'll do kind of here and there to do some level of promotion, like once a month I'll post on Instagram or, Marcus, who's my assistant and our kind of shop manager, he'll do a lot of the posting on Instagram. We do that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like we kind of have this like we don't give a shit approach to the marketing, and I think it has served us well, and it has highlighted that a lot of our perceived competitors they're just full of shit. They're just marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I've got a suspension question for you. I think when I was in your shop, I think you were using KWs on a car. Um, my suspension works fine currently, but one day it'll need replacing.
Right.
I love the OEM feel of my car, and I
Right.
want it to be sort of period correct always,
Right.
but it'd be foolish not to take advantage of some version of like a modern technology, I think, especially in the suspension department.
Right.
Um, where do you sit on what I should put in my car next so that it still gives me the OEM feel? It's very compliant. I lowered my GTI. It rattles the teeth out of my mouth in LA. It's fine on a smooth road. It's amazing on a smooth road.
Right.
But my Porsche is more comfortable to drive, frankly.
Right.
Where do I go? And have you heard of Tractive?
I have heard of Tractive. Um, the guys who represent Tractive in this country
Okay.
are actually really good guys.
Okay.
Craig Watkins and Johannes Van Overbeek. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. They've been to my shop. Craig in particular is a guru of suspension setup.
Okay.
And I basically said to them, look, I want to work with you guys any way I can, but I don't really like the tractive stuff, and
Oh,
what was
interesting.
interesting is they brought a car here that some friend of theirs who claims to be an engine builder and programmer of Motec had done the work, and the calibration was so bad that you could like barely even drive this car, and it was like stalling out and lurching, and I'm like, guys, like if you want to highlight the suspension stuff, I said, just put it on a stock. This was a 911 SC. I said, just put it on a stock car so that people can focus on the suspension, not the fact that you have a car that doesn't run right,
Right,
and I
right.
don't know. I'm sure they've sorted it out. That was like an anomaly, but I wasn't crazy about the tractive stuff. Maybe for some applications it's better than others. Like, Craig had tractive on, one of his vintage race cars, and um, he said it's fantastic. But I also know he's got Öhlins on his 993. I mean, so
Okay.
there's a lot of good suspension companies. It depends what you're doing with the car. A lot of these suspension companies, they have their kind of production shelf kits. Then they have hand-built motorsport stuff. And I think when you get into all this hand-built motorsport stuff, whether it's Öhlins or KW Motorsport, or Penske or JRI, who was a guy who worked for Penske. The stuff is all really good quality components. So it comes down to how you set it up, the support you're getting from that manufacturer, how sort of tailored it is to that specific car, especially if it's some kind of hot rod or race car or whatever.
Sure.
Because look, you could have the best quality components on there, but if you don't set it up right, the car's going to
Right.
drive horrible.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
you could have a Selmer Mark 6, but if you're not a good saxophone player, it's not going to sound so good. So
Right,
it's the
right.
same thing. So I guess, with a 997 like yours, the first question is, do you have PASM on the car?
Yeah.
Do you have the PASM suspension?
Yeah.
The button on the dash? Okay. So in that case, the only suspension that is going to plug into it and uses the same connector and then keeps the button active on the dash and is going to be very OE ride quality is one of the Bilstein kits. I think
Okay.
they call it Damptronic. So, yeah, that's a really nice kit. Bilstein stuff is, very high quality. It may not be as exotic as, some of the KW stuff or Öhlins. But that would probably be the best all around setup for your car.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. The daily watch, as I recalled, you have a sub that you wear every day?
No, I do not wear a Rolex every day in Los Angeles because that's a sure way to get mugged. So I mean, I've got a few Rolexes. It's they make it into this sort of obnoxious game to be able
Yeah.
to buy these watches, which as much as their watches are great and it's a little off-putting
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
deal with that. I think, do you follow that Watches of Espionage guy
Yeah.
on Instagram? So I think, he did a whole article about his experience buying a new GMT, the gray and black one that they call the Bruce Wayne, that he finally got one. He was all excited. And, but he talked about the experience of buying it. And these are meant to be tool watches. And Rolex has, created this whole, scenario and buying experience that, is really just awful and obnoxious.
Right. Right.
There's one, you know, um, Rolex dealer in New York. It's called Gross Jewelers. They're in Garden City, and my family knows them, and so that's a whole different experience dealing with them. But even so, I mean, there is, I guess, sort of a limited allotment of these watches, and a lot of people want them. So, I've been able to get it. I got one out of them. My dad got one. We were able to get one for my sister as a divorce present for her. But yeah, it's tough. And otherwise, like, you walk into, the stores out here, and that they're just not so nice. Like, well, why do I want to buy this? It's like, and then you go into a place like Feldmar Watch where they're so nice, they represent every brand other than Rolex.
Yeah.
That's an enjoyable experience. You want to spend money.
Hmm.
I mean, look, obviously there are people who like being treated badly, and maybe that makes them want the product more or whatever, and so it's probably serving Rolex well. But then there are people who have some self pride or whatever, and they're like, well, I'm not. Why would I want to get treated like shit?
Right.
And
Yeah, totally.
it's so whatever. And then I was able to buy one in London at the Rolex store in Harrods.
Really?
I got an Explorer because I went in and I joked with the guy. Said, "Do you have anything that's actually for sale?" And he kind of laughed. Oh, what do you mean? And I said, well, at home, they don't want to sell you anything. They make up this nonsense about a waiting list, or they try to sell you something else, or try to get you to buy like one of the ugly two-tone watches, and then maybe we'll sell you something else. And he's like, well, what are you looking for? And I said, oh, I want one of those GMTs. And he's like, well, I don't have one of those. He said, I have the full gold one, but I'm not buying
Right.
a $50,000 watch. When it turns into car money, I lose money. I lose interest. I like these kind of, I like tool watches,
Yeah.
that's kind of my thing. And I don't want anything that's
Precious.
more expensive than a car or whatever. So,
Right.
so that I wasn't into. He goes, well, I have an Explorer too. I said, oh, I'd never really considered one of those, and I tried it on, and so I ended up buying it. But I think in Harrods it's a little different because they have a lot of tourists coming through there, obviously, and they don't want to send everyone home empty-handed, and they know that most of the people are not local, so they've
Right.
got you once, and they could sell you something or not sell you something.
Right.
So, and then I also kind of discovered that the only place more dangerous to wear a Rolex than LA is London.
Is
So,
London.
so I think it's a little easier to buy Rolexes in London than it might be in other places. But
So was
that
that recently?
I
The
was
last few
there
years, I guess.
April of 25. So this past, it was like we were there for like it was like Easter weekend was part
Oh,
of the
cool.
time we were there. So that's when it was.
Nice.
Yeah,
Do you go white dial or black dial?
black.
Oh, cool.
They didn't
Cool.
have a white. I
Okay.
asked that, but in retrospect, I think I'm glad I ended up with the black one.
Really? What's on wrist right now? What are you wearing?
Oh, one of these the plastic Swatch 50 Fathoms.
Oh, the 50. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I like dive watches.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a normal a titanium 50 Fathoms.
Oh,
Also,
sweet.
that's a proper tool watch.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
But I like the plastic ones. So
Yeah.
because
I think
today
they
I'm
look
going to the
great.
gym, so I don't want to have like an expensive watch in my gym bag, just sitting there or whatever. So the
What's uh
plastic
what's
ones I don't care. So.
what's the gym routine? Are we going daily? Are we going twice a week? What's the scenario?
No, I usually 2 days a week, and I go to a
Okay.
boxing gym. So
Okay.
I've found boxing is kind of a fun workout. I really enjoy that. So that's my routine to bare minimum to like stay healthy and alive. So.
Okay, I've never been to a boxing class before. Are you hitting bags or it's not like aerobic boxing, obviously. Like,
No, I mean, this is a gym where, you actually have real boxers training.
okay.
So it's that type of environment, which, when you see like these young guys who are, and actually one or two girls who are, like real amateur or kind of junior professional level boxers, and you see their, philosophy and obviously like we talked about the mindset of becoming the best at something, that's kind of motivational,
Cool.
and I do what I can to, try to stay, healthy, to be around for my kids.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, there's some hitting bags. A lot of times it's the trainer, and he's got like the mitts
The
and,
mitts,
you're
yeah.
hitting those. And then sometimes, he puts me in the ring, with some of these young guys, and I'm allowed to hit them. They're not allowed to hit me, at least not in the head. But I've volunteered. I'm like, you know what? I'll put on the headgear because like I feel bad and like, I'm not like not a violent person, and someone would really have to piss me off for me to want to hit them. So it's like, even though it's training and with these other guys and they're wearing the headgear, they're like nice kids at the gym. Like I don't want to
Right.
hit them, so it's taken me a little while to wrap my head around, throwing punches at someone.
Wow.
So
So do they teach you technique as well, or is it just kind of like,
yeah, and I've been doing it for a few years.
oh, cool.
We actually had someone who tried to provoke me into a fight who was working at a neighbor's building and tried to bait me to fight, and I'm obviously not that stupid, but I invited the guy to the gym. I said, you really want to fight with me, you can come to the gym, you can sign a waiver, and then I'll kick the shit out of you. He didn't take me up on it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Marlon, this has been fun, man. This could go on, so we'll have to bring you on for a part two or something. But thank you for the time. What's next on the hit list for watches, though?
Oh, I think I'm done with watches for a while. I have
Oh,
enough
really?
for two lifetimes.
Okay.
So I don't know. We'll see what comes up. Maybe someone will sell me a Rolex. They kind of seem to be the only ones, unless you spend a ton of money. The Rolexes seem to be the only ones that are a halfway decent investment. The rest of them
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
kind of a way to light money on fire. But
So you're not really into other brands then?
I think the ones I own. I like these Blanc Pons. I like Omega. I like IWC. Trying to think if what. Oh yeah, I have one Chopard.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. Which one?
they. So it's the what do they call it?
Is it the
It's a car
LUC?
one.
Oh, the
It's not. No,
Miglia?
it's a um what's the rate? A Millimelia.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
because I remember when they came out, they had the
The rubber strap.
rubber band that looks like a Dunlop race tire.
Yeah,
And but I never bought one because I'm like, they're a little jewelry looking, and
yeah.
it's not an in-house movement on those, so it's more of a jewelry watch than a technically fascinating watch. But the guys at Feldmar did a dinner with the guys from Chopard,
Oh,
and
cool.
they invited me to it, and so, and we were just, and I sat with one of the guy sitting next to me was, I forget his exact role there, but one of the bosses of
Yeah,
Chopard in
yeah.
this country, and was a watchmaker himself, and said, oh, I always wanted one of those, the Mille Miglia. So I did end up buying one of those because it
Oh,
was
that's
something I
cool.
wanted when I was a kid and I couldn't afford it, and so I bought that.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, I'd say the ones I wear the most are the swatches, the Swatch Omega, the Swatch Blancpain.
Sure.
I like my IWCs. I have a real Speedmaster I wear a lot. Um, I did get a Tudor, the Pelagos.
Oh, sure.
Which one is it? The GMT one.
Okay. Yeah,
And I
yep.
really like that. That's a super cool watch. It's funny. That's like basically a lot of people say, "Oh, they're inexpensive Rolex." In a lot of ways, that's a better. It's certainly that's the real modern Rolex tool.
Purpose built. Yeah.
It's fixed spring bars. It's titanium. Like that's a cool watch. So I like
Nice.
that. Very kind of military vibes. I
Yeah.
like sort of the tool watch, military watch sort of thing. But yeah, no more watches. I don't know. We need to buy more real estate. We need more space for our business. So I got to limit the buying of stupid shit that I don't need. So
Right, right. No, I hear you.
yeah.
Well, best of luck with the tangerine car. I think that it deserves some attention from Marlon, and that's just my 2 cents.
It will. Like I said, the shoemaker has no shoes. So, but
Just don't
eventually,
make it too nice so you enjoy it, you know?
yeah, no, I'll eventually it'll get done, and it'll be on the road for me to drive once in a while. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Marlon, thanks, man. Is there anything else you wanted to promote before we go?
Wanted to promote. I don't know. I mean, I just told you how I'm not a self promoter. I don't know. I just, I just, I'm really grateful that these clients come out of the woodwork from all over the world,
Yeah.
and they understand what makes, my engines different, the cars that me and my staff build, what makes us different from some of the stuff that's out there, because I think perceived value is one of the biggest problems, not just when it comes to resto mods, when it comes to all kind of luxury goods. So I'm just fortunate that, you have these people out there who have educated themselves and then show up on my doorstep and appreciate what we do and want to do business with us. So I guess that's just something I would really want to emphasize, that
Yeah.
we're very appreciative of the people who support our business and help us, facilitate the insanity.
Yeah. All right, before we go, because you brought up the term, how do you define luxury?
I would say luxury is something you want that you feel improves your life, but you don't need it. So
That's
I guess
fair.
the harsher way to say it is, stupid shit I don't need. But look, we all want to have, nice things, and feel like there's things we've worked hard for, and that we can be a little bit selfish and have these kind of nice things, or things that we pass down to our children. So that's really what I look at as luxury goods. And a true luxury good is something that you can pass down to your kid, not,
Yeah.
because we have, sort of a lot of things in this world are disposable and cheaply manufactured. And I think the current state of, luxury in the world is people are starting to say, okay, no, I want something that's handcrafted.
Yeah.
I don't want something that's made on an assembly line in China or a place like that. I want something that, is American made, or in other parts of the world where you also have artisans, who are, making and building things that they've taken a lot of pride in, and they want it to last. They want you to enjoy it for a long time and have it be this sort of heirloom.
Yeah. Thank you, Marlon. Really appreciate your time, buddy.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Have a good
We'll
one.
come by soon.
Okay. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
buddy.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.